This is the 1.5 liter 95 horsepower beast that powers my 98 Toyota Tercel. It's been taken out of the car and torn apart, but today it will run once again, or at least I'll try and start it and see if it blows up. I plan to completely rebuild this engine with no prior experience and a very limited budget, which means no taking the cylinder head to a machine shop. I have to do everything myself, whether it's done correctly or not. Spoiler, some stuff will not be done correctly. Last episode, we found our compression problem, which turned out to be caused by the valve that was no longer round and had a crack in it. And to get all of that sorted out, I have ordered a new set of valves for this engine. But in the meantime, since we can't work on the cylinder head without valves, let's get the block sorted out. First things first, I honed the The first couple days of this process were all spent cleaning. Seriously, a lot of cleaning of everything I took off the car and every single internal part of the engine. I think it's time that I make some progress with putting this back together. I've been cleaning engine parts for the last couple hours, and now I'm putting new rings onto my pistons. These are labeled, so I just gotta put the right ones onto the right spots on the pistons. Something like that. And that marks the first of the new parts for this project. First time I've actually opened one of the boxes I bought. Time to get out the cylinder hone. I got the walls of the cylinders covered in oil and then started to hone them until I could get a nice crosshatch pattern for the freshly installed rings to seat into. After I was happy with that, I also checked the cylinders to see how round they were and the actual size of the bore, and I checked that in reference to the service manual and it was all within spec, which is a good thing to hear. After the pistons, the power hits the crank, which I have all new bearings for. These need to be installed and lubricated with assembly lube so they aren't dry during the first start. This assembly lube is going to become a theme for all of this stuff because everything in here needs oil to not seize up. That would also include my connecting rod bearings, which the brand new bearings I bought for this were already bad. One of them was simply just not straight. This was a brand new set of bearings I bought, and I don't feel like I can put that in the engine. It doesn't look right, so I bought an entire another set of them, which delayed everything, but look at the ones from the new set and they look like they're supposed to, so I'm a lot more happy with this. We'll lube those up, get the pistons pushed into the cylinders, and tighten all the bolts down here to the correct spec from the service manual. So guess what I forgot to put in the engine? These are supposed to be down there. And that was a pretty unfortunate thing to find, so I started undoing all of the progress I just did, got the thrust washers in the engine block, and then I could start putting the crank back in and redoing all of this bolt tightening and torquing to the specs in the service manual for a second time. And just like that, that's pretty much it for the block. And hey, look at that, my valves are here. The much bigger job is next, the cylinder head. Since all the valves are already removed, I'm working on getting the valve guides out so I can replace these with new ones. I just got this tool here. Those are the valve guides there and there. So I've just been sticking this into here and then hitting this with a hammer. I just hit the head with the hammer. This is something that I wasn't really sure I needed to do, but they weren't that expensive to get all new valve guides, and it also didn't end up being that bad to get them installed. So I went with it. I used an air hammer to get the new valve guides into the cylinder head, and I tried to do this all at the exact same height, which I measured before I took out the old valve guides. And now with the guides in place, this is where it gets really fun. I need the actual mating surface of the valve to seal against the cylinder head. This is what took a very long time. Since I am installing all new valves, this is usually the part where you send off your cylinder head to a proper machine shop, to have it done properly. That costs a lot more than I'm willing to spend on this project. I started by applying some lapping compound and turning the valves by hand with this little suction cup tool. And I spent hours turning these things back and forth, applying the valve grinding compound, and my first test, they did not really seal at all. I put water up top, and it really did not take that long to start leaking into the cylinder head. So then I started using the somewhat controversial technique of turning the valve from the back with a drill. I spent an entire day trying to get these valves to seal, mostly with the drill and then finishing it off doing it by hand again. Eventually I got it pretty good. Not perfect, some water still went through, but I was pretty confident that this was as good as I can make it without getting it done properly. With the valves now somewhat sealing, it was time to actually get them installed in the cylinder head, which means doing my favorite, not at all tedious task of putting the springs back in. These are the springs that hold the valves closed. First, my new stem seals go on. These prevent oil from going from the cylinder head into the actual combustion chamber. And this is where we get to the kind of tedious part that by the end of this project, I will have done 3 or 4 times now. The valve springs need to be compressed at the same time you're trying to get these tiny little metal keepers into the grooves on the valve. Now, I know what you might be thinking. They make a tool to go around the cylinder head, push the spring down so you can get everything aligned without having to push it down by yourself. I do have one of those, but it was taking longer to try and do that than to just fail at doing it by hand a couple times in the process of actually getting them in there. It is now time to once again deal with my biggest enemy in this entire car series, the Toyota double hex head bolts. You take a square, you take 2 more squares and arrange them slightly rotated until you've got a 12-point shape. That's what these are. That is a triple square socket, and these things are very common and easy to get. Now, Toyota put their best minds on this. They said no to the squares and brought out the hexagons. So you take a hexagon and you take another hexagon. That is a 12-point shape, and that's what the Toyota head bolts are. Not triple square, double hex. This has caused me a lot of problems because I cannot buy this tool. With my single hex in hand, I was able to tighten these things to the required torque spec and the additional 9 degrees of rotation. Next up, the lifters go in. These are what push down on the valves to open them. And then the camshafts go in, and all of the caps for the camshafts all get torqued down to spec. And now it's time for a timing belt to get all of this spinning together. I'm closely following the documentation on this one because this will cause pretty major problems if it's not correct. But in theory, I think it is correct. Right there, that little dot there lines up with this notch, and then up here, there's a hole that you look through, and then there's a dot in there. So in theory, this is lined up, that's lined up. I should be able to spin this. That was 1 turn, and now these are no longer aligned. You can see that was the dot that was in the center of this hole before. And we'll turn it 1 more time. This hole on the pulley will come right back around to where that dot is, right there. And it's still lined up down there. In theory, I think that this is good. And finally, the valve cover goes back on with all of its relevant replacement seals and gaskets. And would you look at that, this thing kind of looks like an engine again. Time to speed run all of its supporting components. We've got an oil pump, a water pump, an oil pan with its new gasket, the rear main seal, new spark plugs, and the good stuff, the intake manifold and the exhaust manifold. And now this thing's pretty much looking like how it did in the episode where I took it out of the car. Time to put this thing back in. Oh wait, I have completely ignored the transmission. This transmission has been opened before. I don't know why, and I don't know by who, but I do know I am putting it back in exactly as it is right now. Of course, that's after getting my clutch put onto the engine, and on the transmission side, I also changed the throwout bearing. For some reason, I woke up very early in the morning the day I decided to put the engine back in the car. I'm not really sure why, I guess I was just excited about the project. And by the time the sun was coming up and the local auto parts store was opening, I was on my way to buy some break-in oil, which is like regular 5W30, but without the 5 and a little extra added zinc. Time to put new fluid back into my transmission. And this is where I hit somewhat of a roadblock. The seals where my CV axles meet my transmission were completely destroyed, and I forgot to buy new ones. But you know what? I am not waiting for that. I've already waited too long to try and start my rebuilt engine. So I got the cooling system filled up, and I am going to attempt to start this engine with no CV axles installed. Not necessarily a recommended approach with no fluid in the transmission, but you know, we'll just keep the clutch pedal down and try to get this thing running. This was my first time turning the key after rebuilding the engine. Now, the injectors were unplugged for this, so this was just to get oil moving around. I know it doesn't seem like it in the video, but this was months of work leading up to this moment. You can tell I got a little lazy with the filming at the end because I really just wanted to see this thing work. So after all of this work and time and spending multiple times the amount of money I bought the car for on parts, it is finally time to actually try and start my rebuilt engine. So here is how that went. I was thinking about making the cliffhanger end right there, but I won't do that to you. But this shaking is not good. That should not have happened. As it would turn out, for my first time ever rebuilding an engine, it did not go perfectly. I missed a pretty critical detail, and that's what caused the shaking, and also the reason it would not idle after the rebuild. The good news is this is a problem I solved, and you're gonna have to get subscribed to see what was wrong and how I fixed it. But the other good news is, even though this was a problem at this moment, when you got the revs up a little higher, the engine did run pretty smoothly. Make sure you get subscribed because next episode, you will see this car drive. Not only that, you'll see what caused this shaking and the reason it would not idle smoothly. And then after that stuff's fixed, you're gonna see it drive a lot better than my first time driving it. This has been a very fun project and it's not even slightly over. Seriously, get subscribed. Lots of good stuff coming. The engine works. I'm pretty happy about that.